Okay, so you might have seen this one pop up. May 4th, 2025. Pretty big announcement,
Yeah, quite the headline. President Trump saying he wants to reopen Alcatraz.
that Alcatraz. And not just reopen, but expand it. The island prison right there in San Francisco Bay.
It's such a potent image, isn't it? Alcatraz immediately makes you think of, well, inescapable punishment.
Totally. It's iconic.
And his reasoning, stated on Truth Social, was to house America's most ruthless and violent criminals.
Right. He framed it very much in terms of law, order, and justice. Strong words.
And he didn't stop there. He also criticized radicalized judges, blaming them for hindering deportations of criminal migrants.
So it ties into that broader theme we've seen.
Exactly. This fits squarely within his established hardline approach to, immigration and criminal justice.
Right.
It echoes earlier talk about Guantánamo Bay or deporting alleged gang members.
For anyone maybe not up on their Alcatraz history, it was a federal prison back in the, 1930s?
That's right, opened in 1934, designed for the really tough cases. But it closed in 1963.
Why did it close again? Was it cost?
Primarily, yes. Extremely high operating cost. Plus, the buildings themselves were deteriorating. The saltwater environment is harsh.
Makes sense. And since then, it's become this huge tourist draw.
A major one. Managed by the National Park Service. People toured the cell blocks.
So right away, you see the problem with reopening it as a prison.
Oh, absolutely. The sheer logistical nightmare. You're talking about a facility dormant for over 60 years.
On an island.
On an island. Limited access, infrastructure that's completely outdated for a modern, high-security prison. The investment needed would be, well, massive.
And that's before you even get into the fact it's currently a national park.
And a historic landmark.
Yeah.
That adds layers of legal and regulatory hurdles. You can't just evict the Park Service.
So unsurprisingly, the reaction was pretty swift.
Very swift and critical. Nancy Pelosi, representing California, essentially called it a non-starter.
Dismissed it, yeah.
Said it wasn't to be taken seriously, pointing out its importance now as a park and tourist site.
And others chimed in too. Doubts about feasibility, cost.
Lots of skepticism from various experts and politicians about whether it's even practically possible, let alone advisable.
So setting aside the practical, can it be done? There's the why now, the context.
Right. As we said, it aligns with previous proposals. It signals a willingness to consider pretty dramatic, maybe even symbolic actions on security.
Which is where the criticism about legal principles comes in.
Exactly. Critics raise flags about potentially bypassing established legal norms, about due process. The idea of creating a sort of special facility like this inevitably sparks debate about the justice system itself.
So where does this leave things? Is this actually going to happen? It feels very much up in the air.
Highly uncertain. I mean, we haven't seen concrete steps from the agencies that would actually have to implement this. No budgets, no real plans announced by, say, the Bureau of Prisons or Department of Justice.
The obstacles seem enormous. Legal, financial, logistical.
They really do. But don't discount the power of the announcement itself.
As a signal.
As a clear signal of intent, it tells you President Trump is willing to float these kinds of drastic measures to push his vision of security and order.
It definitely makes you think. And this might be the really interesting thing for you listening right now. Alcatraz has this layered history, right? Infamous prison, then historic site. Tourist magnet.
A real transformation.
So what does floating the idea of turning it back into a supermax prison tell us about, well, how we as a society handle punishment versus preserving history, and how our values might be shifting or, clashing?
It's a complex question. That tension between dealing with crime, remembering the past, and deciding what places like Alcatraz should represent today, definitely something to chew on.